affairs. Freshly pressed.
Mike's up. Studio is live.
98.1.
Studio silence, please. Good morning to you, and thank you for staying with us. You're listening to Smooth 98.1, your love music, love life radio station, and it's time for us to go into detailed analysis of our newspaper stories inside of Freshly Pressed 981. Freshly Pressed 981 is a flagship show. It's where we'll delve into the stories, and our analysts are ready and poised to go through the stories with us. We have Gbolahan Adenuga. Good morning.
Good morning, Khadijah. Good morning, Valentine, and good morning, Lagos.
And thank you very much for coming in. And good morning to you, Mr. C at D Mr. C.
Good morning, Khadijah. Good morning, Valentine. Good morning, Gbolahan. Good morning, Lagos.
Thank you so much. You can find us on social media, on Twitter at Smooth981 FM. The hashtag is Freshly Pressed 981. And our WhatsApp?
All right, on WhatsApp, we are 0809 444 0981.
All right, let's start with our first story. And this one is for you, Mr. C. In fact, this from the Guardian newspaper. Nigeria launches the first national sex offenders register. It's on the heels of the International Day for the Eradication of Violence Against Women yesterday. This news was greeted with a lot of cheer because apparently Nigeria hasn't had that ever. But being the first country in Africa, the first nation in Africa to, or rather, finally, first time for us to get into this, it said that the sexual offender register will contain the names of all those prosecuted for sexual violence in Africa's most populous nation since 2015. What I find interesting about the story is how it's going to be curated. So ordinary citizens will be able to access the register that is managed by NAPTIP, the Nigeria's National Agency for the Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons. And there are other parts of the story that I want you to unveil, please.
Okay, so this is a brilliant step by the Nigerian government, and it's about time because I've been wondering why we haven't done this before now. And this register, like I said, is the first step in a bid to reduce the growing incidence of sexual abuse being recorded or being encountered in our society today. Now, interestingly, the sexual offender register is supposed to go back to 2015 and contain the names of everyone who's been convicted of a sexual offense. Now, it's interesting to note that currently in Nigeria, there are only two states that maintain such registries, Lagos and Ekiti. 34 states do not do this. Now, what the implication of this is that the group of 15 NGOs who will be tasked initially with providing the content of this register have an onerous task on their hands. Because for Lagos and Ekiti, it is really simple. You just go to the state registries and get information directly. But for the other states, they have to be on the ground and they have to be getting these details. Luckily, the European Union is funding this initiative to a very large extent. And this morning, I logged on to this register. And interestingly, I could access the information.
Fantastic. Could you provide the address for us, please?
It's on the NAPTIP website.
Okay.
There's a section for this, the sex offenders register. There's a section that you click on it, and then there are two subsections. One is for providers, people who provide counseling and other services.
Okay.
Then there's the offender section. Now,
that's naptip.gov.ng.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
That's the website.
Okay.
Now, I must point out that certain things need to be done. The prosecutors and investigators need to be trained and retrained so that incidents where accused persons get off not because they're innocent, but get off based on technicalities or the wrong production or wrong staging of the case should stop. And then also, people should be trained on how to access this website and the information. I was able to access it because I've had some
prior knowledge.
Yes, and I know how to use computers. But the average policeman in Benin, can he do that? So they need to retrain their people, and they need to make sure that this register is available 24 hours a day. There should be no downtime.
But is it a job of the average policeman to carry out investigation or refer to this record?
No.
I mean, to identify repeat offenders, I understand.
Yeah, to identify repeat
Mm.
offenders, but there's even a section where investigations are ongoing because it allows you to make a report where you've been abused or attacked sexually.
All right. Thank you very much. Let's go to our next story. Global Transparency Initiative seeks partnership with the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, is a story from Premium Times. Gbolahan, I'd like you to take us through this story. There's been a lot of questions and aspersions cast on the NNPC for a while, based on some people make allusions to the fact that most of their records are shielded from public eye. How transparent would this make them, though, with this collaboration?
Well, I mean, let me start by talking about this initiative. We're talking about the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, and this is a global best practice organization. And we do have the equivalent in Nigeria, which has been established in Nigeria since 2004. Now that's the NIETI, which is the Nigerian Extractive Industries. And we are now. We have the director of EITI, which is the international body, and it consists of there are several other companies and organizations that are part of EITI, and we have 60 organizations who are currently members of EITI. And what we're looking at now is to get NNPC on board to be a member of EITI now. The director is visiting Nigeria and is made a visit to Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, and to see how they can come on board. And the purpose of this is obviously to promote more transparency in the commodity trading sector, and also in their contract obligations as well. We know NNPC is Nigeria's cash cow. We know that Nigeria generates a huge chunk of revenue from crude oil. And then there's been a lot of clamor to see how NNPC can be more transparent in their dealings. Of course, we know that there's been a lot of issues when it comes to transparency at the NNPC. I would like to go back to the current situation that we have, that is the former Minister of Petroleum. Of course, there were a lot of issues with regarding how much money has been embezzled by this Minister of Petroleum. And of course, this...
Allegedly.
Yeah, that's why I said that has been apparently embezzled. So, and there's still currently a court case that is still proceeding. We still have the EFCC case that is still currently ongoing with respect to the management of the NNPC. There's been a lot of clamor. When this government came into power initially, there was a lot of clamor of trying to see how NNPC can be unbundled, how the company can be privatized so that we can see better transparency. I would like to give an example. If you look at Saudi Arabia at the moment, now what exactly is Saudi Arabia doing? We're talking about their national oil company, that is the Saudi Aramco. They are currently at the stage of privatizing the entity now. And of course, what does privatization do? Privatization helps with better transparency. It helps with better reporting of your financials, of your accounts. It makes it more visible for everyone to see. We know, I know the director of EITI has reported that NNPC has done very well so far. Even the managing director of NNPC has also said that they are the only company at the moment that reports their financials on a monthly basis. That
Really?
only, yes, they do that. They do that. If you go on the NNPC website, you'll find it.
Okay.
But it's one thing for you to report your financials monthly, but what about reporting it line by line so that you break it down and people can really see what expenditures that we are incurring? We still have this issue when it comes to transparency. When the matters came up of subsidies that is being paid by the NNPC, it was called under recovery. Up till now, no one really has a very clear picture of how much NNPC is paying on a monthly basis, even though it's reported that we're paying something between the region of 50 to about 60 billion naira every month for subsidies. But they still need to do better anyway in terms of transparency. And that is the reason why EITI is calling on the NNPC to sign up and become a member.
Yeah.
And
It is the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative as it's like the mother or the full body or the oversight functions on the Nigerian aspect or Nigerian
absolutely
branch.
needy.
Thank you very much, and we hope that this can build on a stronger accountability culture within the NNPC. Let's move on to the next story. Now, this time, but before that, a quick look at the messages on WhatsApp. We have this message here from Chukwuma Chukuwma.
All right, so Ogwema says, please can I have the sex offenders register website? I think Mr. D already mentioned.
Yes, it's on the NAPTIP website. So if you go to naptip.gov.ng, look at the board, you find on one of the tabs, the last tab to the right, sexual offender. When you click on it, you can access that register. Let's move on to this next story. Now, this one is from Premium Times. Actually, judge threatens to jail the SSS Director General over refusal to release Sowore and Bakare. Justice Ayo Mairo Ese of the Federal High Court in Abuja threatened yesterday to jail the Director General of the SSS, the State Security Service, Yusuf Bichi. The judge gave the warning in Abuja on Monday in response to the failure of the SSS to release the detained publisher of Sahara Reporters and his co-accused Olawale Bakare. Your thoughts on this, Mr. C?
Okay, so quick recap. On the 6th of November 2019, the Federal High Court granted an order ordering the Department of State Security Services to release Mr. Sowore on bail. As we speak today, he's not been released on bail. And there have been different accounts that border on the ludicrous as to why he has not been released. From fears that he might be run over by a car to some other...
And several allegations that he's still operating or speaking from inside detention.
Well, which is an indictment on them because he's in their custody. So if he's still speaking from within their custody, that's on them. Now, what has happened is his lawyer has taken out Form 48, which is notice of disobedience of a court order.
Okay.
And that has been brought to the court's attention. Now, the judge has made this has been reported to have made a sensational statement that you'll jail the DG of the SSS if Sowore is not released. Now, legally, that's a proper thing to do. However, practically, I'm not sure how she's going to do this because Dazuki has not been released on bail. Nothing has happened to the DG of the SSS.
You're next order, the next instruction by the judge or judgment by the...
There's nothing to suggest right now. There's no material to indicate that the DSS is ready to comply with this order. So I'm doing a worst case scenario. If they do not do it,
what are the consequences?
It's hard to see because...
Why?
Because there's a precedent, the Dazuki case. Dazuki was never presented, it was never released on bail. What happened? Nothing.
This is I mean, looking at the, let's put Dazuki aside.
Yes.
It's hard to do, but let's
fine. I mean, so even on this,
yes, on the merits of this case.
On the merits of this case, if he's not produced, the judge makes another order, makes another statement. Who is going to arrest the DG of the SSS? Niger Police?
The Attorney General's office, maybe?
The Attorney General surprisingly has been silent on this, and he's a chief law officer. He should have instructed the DSS, advised them to release him in line with the rule of law.
I don't think it's surprising, really, based on the pessimism, based on the antecedents of the governments in time past.
Well, I just wanted to add that, when we're asking about consequences of violating court orders and not obeying orders,
yes,
the people that will suffer is we Nigerians and the country as a whole. When the international community looks at how the government is violating court orders and does not seem to obey the laws of the land, it makes it difficult for any investor or anybody to want to come and
this
invest
is
in
us
the country.
Actually a bit stepping ahead because I mean this court order was passed yesterday, so let's
this is a series of court orders that have been violated.
No, that's not
this
correct.
Is not the first of it.
No, this order was made on the 6th of November, so it wasn't made yesterday. Of not more than 2 weeks later, nothing. Now Amnesty International came out with a report.
No. When I say the order, this particular order, I'm referring to this one.
She just it wasn't an order. It wasn't an order. She just threatened to jail him if he didn't comply with that order. The Amnesty International has compiled 40 incidents where this present administration has not obeyed court orders.
Yeah, I saw that report. Thank you.
Doesn't help.
Emeka from Amor says, let's assume the judge decides to give out the order. Which police officer will have the guts to carry out the order? And we had a message earlier from Oban. Oban says, yeah.
Okay, so Oban says Saudi Aramco is not getting privatized. It is doing an IPO. It's been private for some time now, but I agree privatization is the way to go with NNPC.
All right, let's move on to the next story. E-Dividends from the Punch newspaper. It reports that the Securities and Exchange Commission has ordered registrars to discontinue the practice of requesting for confirmation of bank signature during the e-Dividend mandate management system process. That process has been ongoing for a bit now. How does this change the mode of doing things? Of course, it's going to make I'll say approvals faster. Is there any other aspect it's going to affect?
Well, it's hard to state that now because, as you said, they've cancelled the bank signature requirements. So ostensibly, this was designed to speed up the process of moving investors or stockholders to this e-Dividend mandate management system process.
Yes.
And we've also been told that the number of shareholders that have enrolled on that platform has increased to 2.8 million. But we don't know what the previous figure was. Now, it's important because if you want to move people to this system, you need to remove all the potential bottlenecks.
Yes.
And registrars insisting on getting a bank confirmation, that could take any period of time from 1 to 5 days. And for those shareholders who do not like going through stress, they're like, they can't do this, and they continue with the old system. So it's a good step, and the Securities and Exchange Commission should continue to look for better ways, innovative ways of ensuring that this process is better improved.
Yeah, innovative is the right word there, because I find it hard to stomach when you have an E before a particular system and then you're still resorting to manual ways of doing things. Well, glad to see this development. Thank you very much, Mr. C. I was still taking your messages on WhatsApp 0809 444 981.
All right, we have Stevie Obeko from Sowore who says, "Good morning, crew. The judge wants to jail the DSS boss. Who will execute the order? The police, Nigeria police. Let's see how it pans out." We have Ace from Aga who says, "Given the many infractions by the DSS and in general, the federal government, this threat to arrest the DSS boss shouldn't have been made. He should have been arrested instead. But I wonder who will do this."
There's a process of doing things. I guess that's why. Kenneth says, "I do not think the DG of DSS is acting on his own. There's a higher authority order that he has to obey. If not, he would have been called to order by this same higher authority."
And we have Jeff who says, 5 days took me months. E-Dividend confirmation can be a hack. All right, so we're going on to our next story now, and of course I'm going to be sticking with you, Gbolahan, on this one. Border Benin, Niger haven't met our conditions according to the federal government, and this is from the Premium Times newspaper, and it says, weeks after Nigeria closed its borders to its neighbors, a tripartite joint committee consisting of Nigeria, Niger, and Benin has met to seek ways to end the standoff and also curb smuggling activities along shared borders. Now, this meeting was aimed at resolving the economic and security issues that forced Nigeria to close its borders. So, Gbolahan, what's your take on this one?
Well, it's very sad. It's disheartening to know that just as you part of their government agencies and the Minister of Foreign Affairs was involved, Minister of Finance and Industry and Trade. There were quite a few dignitaries that were present at the meeting. And this meeting was had 2 weeks ago, and they came out with a report or a statement saying that they've had an agreement on the way forward, and quite a lot of us were optimistic that, of course, in another couple of weeks the borders will be open again once Niger and Benin are able to come to terms with the Nigerian government. Part of those agreements then to adopt measures and actions that would facilitate and enhance the suppression of rice smuggling into the country and also prohibit other items from being smuggled into the country. There were other actions that were agreed upon, which was they were meant to have a joint task force that was meant to be inspecting the goods that were coming into Nigeria. What was meant to be happening was you were supposed to have the Niger customs officers and also the Benin customs officers when the goods arrive into the country, into Benin or Niger, they were meant to hand over those containers or whatever goods come into their country across the border to the Nigerian customs. Usually what normally tends to happen is that they discharge at Benin and Niger, and these containers are not usually they're not usually, there's usually no security patrol that goes along the border and exchange the goods with the Nigerian customs. So normally, and so right now what the Nigerian government is asking for is that, of course, there should always be the policing and monitoring of any consignment that is meant to cross across the Nigerian and the Niger border, or the Benin and the Nigerian border at any time by the customs. So these are all measures that have been put in place. But unfortunately, what has happened now is that the Niger and Benin are not complying with these measures. For some reason best known to them, they seem not to be playing along or playing ball with the Nigerian government. And of course, what this means is that we can have the border closure for far longer than January 31st. We know the implication of the border closures. We know the cost of goods and products that have skyrocketed over the last couple of months now. We're talking about rice, talking about other poultry items. So this, all in all, isn't good for Nigeria. It's not good for Niger because, of course, they are also losing business. It's not also good for Benin.
It's Benin, though.
Oh,
We got people might hear it and think it's Benin City.
oh, Republic of Benin, I should say, then, not Benin.
Yes,
Republic of Benin.
Thank you very much. This is also from Olatunji on WhatsApp. Olatunji says, good morning. I'm Olatunji from Ajegunle. Thank you very much for joining us. Please, is there any update on the Epi saga yet? We spoke about this inside of Business Express 91. Please on YouTube for the recap. Chukwuma Chukuwma says, on the DSS boss not obeying court orders, can anyone remember the drama that played between the vice president, who was acting president at the time, and the cabal out when president traveled? If you remember this, you would know why we are here on this case. Very interested.
All right, so going on to our next story. This one here is from the Guardian newspaper. 1.98 trillion naira investment gap cripples telephony services. Now, an investment gap of about 1.98 trillion in the telecommunications sector is currently hindering some 14 million Nigerians from accessing basic telephony services in the country. And this is actually based on the fact that the telecommunications industry needs about 80,000 base transceiver stations to have a ubiquitous and more robust service. Currently, what we have, Gbolahan, is 30,598 BTS. Which is, pretty much known as telecommunications masts. We need more masts. What is the problem? Lands, getting signals? What exactly does this mean?
Well, I mean, I'd encourage anyone to read this article. It's a very long article, and you need to read it. And it speaks a lot about the challenges that we face in Nigeria in terms of investment and in terms of the business environment. Now, over the years, the article did say that Nigeria currently has about $70 billion worth of investment in the telecom space. And just as you've mentioned, we have about we have about 30,000 base cells, mass cells. That's what you know as the mass cells.
Base
transceiver stations.
Yes,
those are the mass cells that you have that are lined up on roads and all over. And these are stations that are used in receiving telephone services and signals across the country. I mean, you said we need about 80,000 of those. And according to this article, it does say that for one mast cell or the base telecommunication cells, you need 40 million naira as an investment for that. So you can imagine if you multiply 40 million naira multiplied by about 40,000 units that is required, then you'll be talking about an investment of about 1.98 trillion naira needed for investment in Nigeria. Then the article now talks about maintaining those masts as well. And to maintain them, it talks about costing between 190 million naira to about 200 million naira every month to power those stations. And we're talking about diesel costs here. Now, when you look at all this now, all what we're hearing now is about the high cost of doing business in Nigeria. I mean, if we did have power, there will be no need for spending this huge amount of money to maintain that. And then when we're not also talking about investment too, we also need the telecommunications company to invest in Nigeria to build the base cells. Of course, is the business environment that friendly? We know there's a lot of revenue that is being generated by these telecoms companies, but where is the incentive to invest in the country when the business environment isn't so hospitable?
I think the cost goes beyond just running costs in terms of power and everything.
Yes,
I
yes.
think it's also largely dependent, falling on the issue or bordering on issues of security, because they've
Well,
complained,
yeah,
they've complained about it, recently, time and
Mhm.
time again. They keep complaining about how most of their masts are
Damage,
vandalized,
absolutely.
expensive products, parts are carted away.
So
Wade Ahime sent in a message, says, great job, guys. I'm watching. Great to watch you guys live. Thank you very much. Ojo Oladile says, speaking on the Sowore issue, Ojo is commenting on YouTube. He says, we do not have regard to the rule of law. The SSS is above the law, apparently, although the fear is that he might abscond like Nnamdi Kanu. Michael Adetutu says, based on Sowore case, the judge said the DSS boss will be jailed if the rule of law is not adhered to. The question is, who will carry out the operation to get the DSS boss? Joe also comes back to respond and say on the border closure issue, Benin and Niger collect the duties and the goods are then smuggled into Nigeria. So two-part system there.
All right, we're going to quickly take this one. The federal government orders for new equipment to improve airport security. Now, Mr. C, I'm going to take you up on this one. And now, as part of efforts to secure Nigeria's airports, the federal government has ordered for new technology-based security facilities to be installed at major airports nationwide. And it's also been said that apart from placing orders for some of these facilities, the federal government has also procured more sophisticated scanning security equipment with the latest technology capable of detecting all forms of explosives and narcotics. So what do you think about this story? Trying to improve on the security at this point.
Okay, so it's a brilliant decision by the federal government, and we all know that with regards to security, you can never stay in one spot. You constantly have to upgrade your security equipment, your security architecture to constantly deal with the ever changing, ever improving security risks that we face each day. Now, some of the measures here are designed to keep up with the threats that have been changing exponentially, and they include body scanners, luggage scanners, and these are designed to be non-invasive. We've all traveled through the airports, international airports,
Most of us.
and the manual checks are just frustrating. This is designed, or this is supposed to be designed to get rid of all of that. Now, also, there have been numerous incidents where unauthorized persons are found on the runway, found on the tarmac. There have been ridiculous reports of aircraft being robbed on the tarmac. And part of this measure is to ensure that new perimeter fencing is put up, and then people who are illegally living on airport land are chased off, because part of the explanations are that the houses that are illegally constructed, the unauthorized persons coming through those houses and gain access into the airports. Also, they've reiterated the need to constantly vet the aviation security personnel that work there, because some people who've been retired or dismissed still find their way onto the airport and are milling around. Now, all of this is good. On paper, it's brilliant. The challenge with Nigeria, as always, is implementation. If they can implement 60% of what they put down on paper, will be much better.
Thank you. Obama Chidoze on WhatsApp says, wait, we do not have enough base stations. Can we remember when some government agency was about to tax the telecoms more and threatened to bring those masts down if they do not pay? And we're asking why we don't have enough masts or base cells. Why aren't we serious in this country? Rainmaker says, in this age and time, if not that we live in a dysfunctional society, is the law supposed to be respected of a DG? So no one in the executive can advise the DG to DSS to obey court order. Guys, remember the back and forth about releasing him? DSS first said they've not received court injunction when they had been represented in court. Later, no one came for him, is what they said. Later, they said they have not seen anyone credible to release him or to put in bail after meeting with the bail conditions. Now they said that they are doing some paperwork. Very interesting. Thank you very much for your message. C from VI says Nigeria doesn't seem to be a serious country. How difficult can it be to investigate how smuggled foreign rice enters the country? Rather than punish our neighbors, we should prosecute the smugglers and police our borders. Shola from Agodo.
All right, we have this one here by Shola who says the banker's confirmation even costs money. Imagine if you need money, it will make the process difficult. So this is a welcome development. Emeka from Ejibo, or rather, we're taking one by Olivera from Festac. Okay, Felix Oliver from Festac says, "Hello, Smooth. Great job, guys. That lady's voice is music to my soul." All right, thank you.
And that's Khadijah. We're going to be together here for the Grapevine 981. We're out of time. A special thanks to our analysts for stepping in. At Mr. C as is at D Mr. C. Gbolahan is at Mr. G Quest. Special thanks to everyone. Let's continue this conversation on social media. The hashtag is freshly pressed 981. This is Smooth Breakfast.
The headlines, the stories, the news.
Voila, man.
Short.
Nice job.
Yeah.